When the charter plane started to shake violently at 30,000 feet, I knew my tropical vacation was taking an unexpected turn. The pilot, a sun-weathered guy named Frank with questionable credentials and an even more questionable aircraft, had assured me this shortcut would save time. Apparently, it was saving me from the rest of my natural life. Minor turbulence, Frank had announced with a wink as the entire control panel lit up like a Christmas tree. 10 minutes later, with one engine on fire and the other making sounds a blender would find concerning, I realized Frank's definition of minor differed significantly from mine. The Pacific Ocean approached with alarming speed. Frank's last words before impact, I forgot to mention I never finished flight school, were less than reassuring. Then darkness. I woke up floating on a chunk of fuselage, the taste of salt water and regret filling my mouth. Around me, nothing but open ocean and scattered debris. No Frank. No other passengers. Just me, Daniel Reid, 34-year-old software developer who had splurged on a solo vacation to find himself. Ironic considering I was now very much lost. After drifting for what felt like eternity, my makeshift raft bumped against something solid. An island. Not the resort island I'd paid for, but beggars with severe sunburn can't be choosers. I dragged myself onto the shore, collapsing on warm sand. The island looked like it had been ripped straight from a travel brochure, dense jungle, pristine beach, swaying palms. Beautiful if you ignored the whole might die here aspect. Hello? My voice sounded foreign, raspy from salt water and screaming. Anyone here? Room service? Minibar. Only the waves answered. That first night, I slept on the beach using a seat cushion as a pillow and my tattered suit jacket as a blanket. 5-star accommodations, these were not. The next morning, practicality kicked in. I needed water, food, shelter, in that order. My Boy Scout training 3 months before I quit to join computer club was fuzzy, but I remembered the basics. I ventured into the jungle, finding a freshwater stream that didn't immediately give me intestinal distress. Small victories. For shelter, I salvaged what I could from the wreckage that had washed ashore. Part of the plane's wing became a crude roof, life vests transformed into bedding. My new home looked like it had been designed by a toddler with a loose understanding of architecture, but it would keep me dry. Mostly. This is fine, I told myself on the third day, chewing on coconut meat that tasted like sweetened cardboard. Just a temporary setback. Someone will notice the plane is missing. Meanwhile, I got busy carving help in the sand large enough to be seen from space. Or at least from a passing ship that wasn't driven by someone with Frank's navigational skills. 2 weeks in, I had established a routine. Wake up, check my pathetic fish traps, usually empty. Collect rainwater, stare longingly at the horizon, pretend the coconut I'd drawn a face on wasn't my best friend. I'd named him Wilson because even in crisis I lacked originality. What do you think, Wilson? Shellfish or fruit today? I asked, then answered in a high-pitched voice, surprise me, you handsome devil. Talking to myself was probably not a great sign, but sanity seemed like a luxury at this point. It was around day 18 when I noticed something odd. The pile of firewood I'd stacked meticulously beside my shelter had been rearranged. Not scattered by wind or animals, deliberately stacked in a different pattern. Huh, I said, staring at the wood. Either I've developed sleepwalking with an interest in alternative woodpile arrangements or hung in the air. I dismissed it as fatigue or possibly early onset coconut poisoning. Then my fishing net, crafted from threads of airplane seat cushions and excessive free time, went missing. The next day, it reappeared in exactly the same spot, but with 3 fish trapped inside. Fish that I definitely hadn't caught. That's considerate? I told Wilson, who stared back with his drawn-on eyes. But also deeply concerning. I began keeping closer track of my supplies. Half a papaya disappeared overnight. Footprints that weren't mine appeared near the stream. Once I woke to find my fire, which had died in the night, mysteriously rekindled. I'm losing it, I concluded, running my hands through my now shaggy hair. Island madness. It's the sequel to Cabin Fever, with better views but worse food. But what I found on day 23 couldn't be explained away. I had ventured farther into the jungle than ever before, marking trees with my pocket knife to find my way back. I came across a massive banyan tree I hadn't seen before, its sprawling roots creating a natural cathedral. Carved into its trunk was a symbol, a spiral with 3 lines radiating outward like a stylized sun. The carving was fresh, the exposed wood still light-colored. I definitely hadn't done this. Wilson, I whispered when I returned to camp, I don't think we're alone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat awake, my back against a palm tree, a sharpened stick in my hand. Every rustle of leaves made me jump. Every night sound became footsteps. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted, paranoid, and convinced of one thing: someone or something was watching me. "All right, whoever you are," I announced to the empty beach the next morning, "I know you're there. You want to share the island? Fine. But touch Wilson again and we're going to have problems." I had noticed Wilson had been moved during the night, placed facing the jungle rather than the ocean. A clear message, if an oddly delivered one. I decided to go on the offensive. If someone was stalking me, I would stalk them right back. I set up a perimeter of sorts around my camp. Thin threads stretched between trees that would break if crossed, piles of leaves that would rustle if stepped on. Amateur hour surveillance, but it was all I had. My exploration deeper into the island's interior revealed more signs of habitation. A clearing with the remains of an old fire pit, a crude lean-to long abandoned, and most disturbingly, wreckage. Not from my plane, this was older, weather-beaten, and rusted. Part of a hull with faded lettering. Oceania Voyage. Oceania Voyager, I whispered, recognizing the name of a cruise ship reported missing 3 years ago. Headlines flashed in my memory. Luxury cruise disappears in Pacific. No survivors found. Except it seemed there might have been. I found more debris scattered throughout the jungle. Pieces of metal, tattered clothing, even a waterlogged passport too damaged to read. The island was a graveyard of lost travelers. And someone had survived long enough to arrange all this. That night, I awoke to a sound, soft footsteps circling my shelter. I gripped my makeshift spear, heart pounding. "I know you're there," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's talk like civilized castaways." The footsteps stopped. Then, a voice, raspy as if seldom used. "You should not be here." A chill ran down my spine. "Neither should you, I'm guessing. But here we are." A figure emerged from the darkness, human, but barely recognizable as such. She was tall and gaunt, her skin weathered by sun and wind. Her clothes were a patchwork of salvaged fabric and what looked like woven palm leaves. Her hair hung in matted dreads past her shoulders. "I'm Eliza," she said, the name sounding strange on her tongue, as if she hadn't used it in years. "This island is mine." "Daniel," I replied, "and I'm pretty sure islands don't have property deeds, especially uncharted ones." Her eyes narrowed. "You brought it with you." "Brought what?" "My charming personality? A severe case of sunburn." "The signal," she hissed. "The beacon. They'll come now." I thought of the emergency locator from the plane that I'd been trying to repair. "That's kind of the point? Getting rescued." Eliza spat on the sand. "Rescue. That's what we all thought." Over the next few hours, Eliza's story unfolded. Fragmented. Sometimes incoherent, but chilling. She had been a marine biologist on the Oceania Voyager when it ran aground on a hidden reef near the island. Unlike what the news reported, there had been survivors. 12 initially. "This island," she said, staring into the fire I'd built, "isn't on any map for a reason." According to Eliza, the island appeared on the surface to be a standard tropical paradise. But at its center stood ruins, ancient stone structures that predated any known Pacific civilization. The cruise ship's captain had recognized the symbols on the stones. He'd seen them before in restricted maritime documents. "He said the island moves," Eliza whispered. "That's why it's never been properly charted. It's not always here." I laughed nervously. "Islands don't move, Eliza. This one does. And it's not uninhabited." The survivors had discovered this the hard way. One by one, they began to disappear. Sometimes they would return, changed, vacant-eyed, and speaking nonsense about the masters beneath. Sometimes they didn't return at all. So what are we dealing with here? Cannibals? Ghost pirates? Island monsters? I asked, only half joking. "Something older," Eliza replied. "Something that was here long before humans sailed the Pacific. Something that doesn't want to be found but can't resist experimenting when victims arrive." I thought of the strange symbols, the feeling of being watched. "And you've survived here for 3 years? How?" "I made a deal," she said simply. "I stay on the shore. I never go inland past the banyan tree with the spiral. And I make sure no signals ever leave this island." That explained her anxiety about my emergency beacon, and why she didn't seem thrilled about potential rescue. "What did you see inland, Eliza?" What's really out there? She stood abruptly. Dawn's coming. Go back to where you came from, Daniel. The plane. The shore. Stay there. Don't try to contact anyone. Don't fix your beacon. She turned to leave, then paused. And if you hear chanting at night, block your ears. No matter what, don't listen. With that cryptic warning, she vanished into the jungle, leaving me with more questions than answers and a growing sense of dread. I'd like to say I heeded her warning. That I stayed put, minded my own business, and didn't let curiosity get the better of me. But then this would be a very different story. The next day, I followed her tracks inland, beyond the banyan tree with its spiral marking. The jungle grew denser, unnaturally so, the light filtering through the canopy taking on a greenish hue. Bird calls silenced. The air grew thick with humidity and something else, an electric charge that made the hair on my arms stand up. I found the ruins Eliza had mentioned, stone structures half reclaimed by vegetation. They were wrong somehow, angles that didn't quite add up, doorways too narrow for a human frame, symbols that hurt my eyes when I tried to focus on them. In the center stood what appeared to be an altar, stained dark with what I desperately hoped wasn't blood. Surrounding it were more recent additions, electronic equipment scavenged from the cruise ship arranged in a bizarre configuration that resembled a satellite array. Fascinating, isn't it? A voice said behind me. I spun around to find a man in the tattered remains of a captain's uniform, his weathered face split by a wide, unnatural smile. Behind him stood 3 others, cruise ship staff by their uniforms, though their vacant expressions and synchronized movements suggested something was very wrong. Captain Harris, Oceania Voyager, he introduced himself with a mockery of his former professionalism. Welcome to our little research outpost. Research? I asked, slowly backing away. Oh yes. The entities beneath the island, they're quite interested in human biology. Human minds. In exchange for our help, they've shown us wonders. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling light. Eliza refused to understand. She clings to her humanity as if it's something precious. But we've evolved beyond that limitation. I noticed now the subtle wrongness of his movements, the occasional ripple beneath his skin as if something else occupied his body. They speak through us now, Harris continued. And they've been waiting for someone like you, someone with technical knowledge. Your airplane parts, combined with our equipment, we can finally amplify the signal. What signal? I managed to ask. His smile widened impossibly. The invitation. There are more of them, you see. Waiting in the deep. They've been patient for millennia. But now with your help, they can find their way here. I turned to run, but the others moved with inhuman speed to block my path. Harris approached, that terrible smile never wavering. Don't worry, he said. The adaptation process is uncomfortable but brief. And afterward, you won't remember enough to be afraid. What happened next is a blur of desperate fighting, running, and the most terrifying game of hide-and-seek imaginable. I remember the captain's hands on me, cold and somehow wrong with too many joints. I remember breaking free, using my knowledge of the jungle paths to outpace my pursuers. And I remember Eliza appearing like a vengeful spirit, wielding a makeshift flamethrower crafted from cruise ship parts and attacking the captain and his followers. Run, she screamed. Get to the shore. Now. I did as she ordered, sprinting through the jungle as inhuman screams echoed behind me. At the shore, I found my makeshift raft upgraded with salvaged materials and a small motor, Eliza's work, prepared for just this moment. As I pushed off from the beach, I saw her emerge from the tree, lean, clothes singed, and a bloody gash across her forehead. Eliza! Come on! I called out. She shook her head. I can't leave. The deal, remember? But you still can. Get far away from here. And Daniel. Her eyes met mine. If you see a ship, don't signal it. If you spot an island, don't land. Just keep going until you find something you recognize. The motor sputtered to life. As my raft pulled away from the shore, I saw movement at the jungle's edge, figures, not quite human, emerging from the trees. Eliza turned to face them, shoulders squared. I drifted further out to sea, the island growing smaller behind me. The last thing I saw was Eliza standing on the shore, a solitary guardian against whatever waited in the jungle. 3 days later, a Japanese fishing vessel spotted my raft. When I told them my story, they exchanged looks I recognized, the same ones you're probably giving me now. The looks that say, poor guy, sun-damaged brain, tragic really. The official report lists me as the sole survivor of Charter Flight 119. It explains my island as a known but unnamed atoll, one that appears on maritime charts but not tourist maps. My descriptions of Eliza and the others were attributed to dehydration and trauma. But here's the thing. I've checked every maritime database I can access. The Oceania Voyager's disappearance remains unsolved. The ship never recovered. And occasionally, when I turn on my television or radio at exactly 3:17 a.m., I hear a burst of static followed by a familiar voice repeating the same message. Stay away from the moving island. They're still waiting. So if you're planning a Pacific vacation, do yourself a favor. Check the reviews thoroughly. And if your pilot's name is Frank, maybe consider driving instead.